30 Talk with Chad and friends. Log in each week for topics covering social, economic, and entertainment. It's time to talk 30.
All right. Good evening, friends. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to 30 Talk. This is actually the first 30 Talk of 2021. I know I've taken off a lot of weeks, but it's well deserved. We had a lot going on out there in the world. So we're back, and we're back with a topic that I kind of wanted to address. Was one of the first topics I wanted to touch on for the year, right? I actually wanted this to be one of the first topics I addressed in general on when I came up with the whole concept of 30 Talk, right? And it's about employment. It's about job seeking. It's about just kind of seeing what's going on out there in the world. I wanted to talk about what should we be doing? How do we prepare ourselves for going out there looking for work? How do we prepare ourselves for interviewing? How do we prepare ourselves for improving our current skills? So with that in mind, I reached out to, I reached out and I said, I need to find someone that's qualified to talk about it, right? Because, I can talk about just about anything, but I needed someone who's actually qualified, who works in the area. And you guys know this one thing about our channel is we give you guys very good information. Let me fix my camera because I'm looking all on the side, right? So I want to give you guys great information. So with that being said, I'd like to introduce my guest for today's 30 Talk, right? So my guest for today's 30 Talk, she is actually, and funny enough, we were talking, we have like a lot in common, right? So she's actually, she is the Director of Business and Industry Workforce Training at New York City College of Technology, CUNY. She's administrator for over 15 years, broad experience developing and administering industry-specific training programs, right? She motivates students to cultivate knowledge, skills, and explore their future passion. And I'm definitely going to ask her some of these questions that I know that you guys are going to, you want to know. Some of you might have kids that are getting ready to go out there in the workforce. Some of you yourselves might have lost your jobs and you're trying to reinvent yourself, right? So she very educated woman. I always have educated people here, people who are very knowledgeable in their fields. She has her MSW from Fordham University. So I'm not going to talk about her the entire time and just bring her in for 2 minutes. So I'd like to introduce my guest today, Shamira Busby Farser. How are you doing? Hello.
How are you?
All right. So welcome to 30 Talk. Welcome to 30 Talk. So I gave a nice introduction, about you, right? So I didn't go into everything, but just can you kind of give people a general idea, or did I do a great job kind of explaining what you do?
You did a phenomenal job. Go.
All right. So let's talk about we're in a pandemic now, right? And some people think we're in the tail, and I kind of think we're right in the middle of it. And a lot of people lost jobs.
Oh, yeah.
Over the last couple of months, a lot of people, maybe they might not have lost job, but they're like, listen, I realize the job I'm doing right now, I could be doing something else. Or we have some new graduates, some young people out there who are, just getting out of high school or getting ready to leave high school this year. In a few months, right? Because we're in January. Some people are getting ready to leave high school in 5 months or so. And they don't know, they have no idea what the future holds, or you're a parent and you don't know what to do with your child, right? So let's start with our first topic today, right? Which is exploring work, knowing what you want. When we came up with the topics and you said knowing what you want, like, can you kind of explain what you mean by knowing what you want? I mean, how do you figure that out? Like,
it's one of those things that people seem to be challenged with. It's one of those harder questions where if you ask someone to tell me about yourself, some folks just don't know where to begin, how to be well versed in communicating, what their skills are, their talents are, or even their interests. And one of the most complex things that one could really hone in on is what they truly want to accomplish in terms of their employment goals. So it takes a lot of soul searching, but also it takes a deeper understanding of your passion and where you see yourself positioned in the world so that you can tap into the skills that you have and make that a monetary thing. How can you create a potentiality and possibilities for yourself based on what you know? And oftentimes you don't have to go too far to find out what you want. It's right in you. You just have to tap into it and figure out, okay, is this what I truly want to do and make money from it?
Right. So one of the things, and I'm going to touch on this as a skill later on. So I remember one of my leadership people saying having that 2-minute elevator conversation. So I'm going to talk. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. Right. So one of the things we wanted to kind of also touch on is there are people out there looking for jobs right now. A lot of people are unemployed right now. Right.
Yeah.
And one of the things we talked about is, where should people be looking for jobs? We're like, people are saying like there's no jobs. Their jobs are so hard to find. There's so many people laid off. Is that real? Do you think that's really accurate, or is just maybe they're just people being picky, or people? I mean, is it a combination of both? I mean, I know we're in a pandemic, so I mean, where should if I'm looking for employment right now, where should I be looking for?
Well, first, if you shop and you tend to patronize specific places and you feel that, if you're giving your money to a specific place, that's one place to start if that's the industry that you want to get into. So for instance, if you are into marketing, sales and whatnot, and you shop at Target or you shop at Foot Locker or any of these big box stores, that's definitely a good place to start. It's one of those things where you want to explore. You explore certain opportunities to find out if you like it or not. If you don't like it, then you make a shift. You pivot. You figure out exactly what you would want to definitely accomplish next in terms of your goals and desires to remain and sustain your employment. Now, it goes both ways because there are times where people are picky. They have these grandiose dreams about what they want to accomplish, and usually it's tied to money. Anything that would make someone big money, as they say, is what they are gravitated to. But oftentimes they don't take the time to understand that you have to creep before you walk. Right. You have to really move up the ladder and start from a place, a base. And I'll use my experience for example. When I first started working at CUNY, I started working as a work study student. Okay. And I went into the building, I looked at it and I said, oh my gosh, this place looks so dilapidated and run down. What kind of welfare business is this? Because the buildings weren't kept well. And I had this lofty dream of, doing something else and shifting. But then when I got there, I had on these pleather red pants. I remember the day.
Pleather. Okay.
It was a pleather burgundy pants with, I think it was a turtleneck. Okay. And I went up and the guy, my boss at the time, he looked at me and, it was a bit of a chuckle. I could see the expression on his face. But then he gave me a shot. He gave me like an on-the-spot interview because I just walked into the place. He gave me an on-the-spot interview and he asked me my skills. My skills were limited at the time, but he gave me a shot. He told me that he would have me work with his administrative assistant. So I worked with the administrative assistant, and from there, that sparked my interest in having to do administration with social work. And over the years, I've moved from work study to administrative assistant. When my previous boss was an administrator, he passed on, so he died. I got his position. I moved up to coordinator and I moved up the ladder. But there had to be an interest there for me to learn the new skills that were given to me and that spark and drive to move forward and elevate within, the system working at CUNY.
Right. So what I'm hearing then, right? And I can kind of reflect on a little bit of experience that I had. What I'm hearing you saying that don't be afraid to start at the entry level and kind of work your way through, move from position to position, right? And exactly. I think personally, that's a mistake that I made early on. I remember graduating from college, and one of the first jobs, because I did a few jobs when you first graduate, and one of the first jobs I did, I went to work at Montefiore Hospital. I'll never forget, right? And they wanted me to push around medical records, like take it from one place to another. And I'm like, I have a college degree. I'm not pushing around medical records from one place to another. And I was like, you know what? And I'm not traveling all the way from Brooklyn to go to the Bronx to do it. I lasted a week and a half in that job. I was like, this, right? So who knows where I would have been had I have stayed in that area, right? And I kind of learned that it took me a while to kind of understand that you don't start. Right, you like Natasha Dixon, another good friend of mine who's at MSW as well. She said you have to creep before you walk. You can't walk in and be the supervisor on day. Well, some cases you could with experience, but you
Right.
can't walk in and be supervisor on day one or the manager
No.
on day one.
Right. So it just goes back to your ego. The ego has a way of taking over the way how you think and can discern whether you're making the right decisions. And you have to compartmentalize your thoughts and understand that, are you here to grow and figure out what your career path is going to be, or are you here chasing dollars? If you find yourself chasing money, you will continuously be going through this revolving door of trying to find employment. So is there a market? Are there jobs out there? Absolutely. There are jobs out there. Sometimes the information, unfortunately, is not given to the people who truly need it. So you'll find individuals from within, they'll, say, okay, there are X amount of jobs available, and they'll pull in the people that they know to occupy some of those positions, whether or not they're a good fit. Meanwhile, the folks who truly need it aren't getting those opportunities. So, it's a two-way street. It's a way of your mindset. It's developing a growth mindset. It's understanding that you have to exert some sort of humility, but also don't limit your potential by looking at what the position is. Because that position as a male clerk could have definitely led to you being an administrator, probably even in a shorter time that you anticipated because you had your degree. So it's a matter of just making sure that you explore what the opportunities could potentially be by looking at the organization, talking to people at the organization if you have the chance. Now we have technology at our fingertips. So if you were to look at LinkedIn, you could tap into a person who works there and send them a message. Hey, I see that you work for XY company. What's the culture like? Just ask questions, and people are willing to share, because if it's not good, I remember I was applying to Catherine Gibbs a long time ago. And when I walked in the school, the administrator made it seem as if everything was perfect about the school. And then when I walked the hallways for the tour, the girl was like, nah, you don't want to go here.
Wow.
So you will find people who will tell you the truth,
right?
Unless they're really vindictive and don't want to see you prosper. But there are people who's going to really share the day in the life with you. You just have to go out and see what the information is for you so that you can make a well-informed decision.
Great. So one of the things that I heard you say is the technology is at our fingertips, right? So if people don't know, there's certain sites out there that you can search. A lot of positions out there, right?
Oh, yeah.
So like Indeed, you can definitely search for Indeed. A city job, there's absolutely nothing wrong with a city job. Great benefits, a state job. So if you're looking for a city job, go to nyc.gov and just go to each agency and look. There's always a career section in every single one of those. And you can go up and down through agencies, right? So that's something I do. Like, I hope my boss is not watching, but that's something I do every month, right? So I look up and down and know to see, because you always have to kind of think, can I move around? Is this something I can do? You always have to kind of look to reposition ourselves. It's something I kind of thought about a couple of months, maybe years ago. We are the adults, right? We are this generation's adults, right? We are the ones out there that's kind of running things, right? Yeah. So don't be afraid to go to nyc.gov, nyc.gov or nys.gov. Also, look out for federal jobs on usa.gov. Make sure you guys also take city exam, take state exams. It might take a little while for you to get called, but take those exams, right? Because you never know where they'll end up. I started out as a child protective specialist, and now I'm a director, right? So you kind of you have to start somewhere to get somewhere.
Yes.
So we have the sites to go and look at, right?
Right. Well, I'll plug in a few more.
Okay.
Also, the small business services, you can check to see what small businesses out there, because oftentimes, if you don't get with the corporations, you could check to see what small businesses are hiring, because oftentimes they need help too. Don't shy away from internships, because internships usually lead to full-time positions. Also, temp jobs. Temp jobs definitely can get you in the door. Employers prefer to look for temps because they want to try you out. It's a trial basis. And once they see that you're a good fit, they'll make the decision to bring you on. But also the Workforce One Center, which is connected with small business services, people can tap into. They do resume preparation and things like that there. And again, any place that you patronize has a career section. So check them out. The Department of Labor. Those are my extra plugs if you're looking for any type of opportunities. CUNY, shout out CUNY. Go to CUNY. Complete a profile, fill it out. It can be from maintenance, secretary, whatever have you. And all of the positions doesn't necessarily mean that you have to take a civil servant exam.
Right. And one of my first jobs actually was with the Research Foundation through CUNY. So shout out CUNY. Back in the days, I worked in the lab feeding rhesus monkeys. That's a true story. I fed monkeys, Lehman College. Shout out Professor Schwartz. But so now we're getting ready now. We're looking at the sites. You have to submit a resume and a cover letter.
Oh boy.
Right. So let's get into resumes and cover letters a little bit, right? There's so many styles of cover letters. So many. What are some of the things that I should? How should I make my cover letter look? Let's start there. Like, is there a format to make my cover letter look a certain way, or to get kind of recognized, or like what should not be on there, and how far back should I be going?
I could go on and on with what should not be out on there. Just don't tell your personal business in your cover letter. Don't say that you are the best person for the job and you really didn't explain yourself thoroughly. We see a lot of templates because the internet it has its good, but it can also be evil. People are finding themselves copy and pasting. There are so many technology now and apps and systems and software that can detect when something is being plagiarized. So don't use Google and say, sample cover letter and then expect to pilfer that information and put it on your own and expect it to be that. One of the things that people seem to get trapped is having other people do their cover letters and never read it or proof it to make sure that it sounds like them. If you're writing something and I'm listening to you speak to me and you don't sound anything like what is written on this paper, I can tell that there's definitely a different characteristic or person that is on paper versus who's in front of me. So you want to make sure that your language is clear and it represents who you are in terms of your personality. The cover letter should be that opening. Business writing, I think people has done away with having to do that because of the emails and things. They're short, they're quick, they're dirty. You send it out, you put an emoji, and people get the message. But
so no emoji. So what you're saying is no emojis in your cover letter, no smiley face.
Where you going with that, Chad?
I'm making it clear.
Please don't do that. Don't even put your picture on there. I've seen some resumes and cover letters where people posted pictures. Yes.
Wow, okay.
In certain industries, it is definitely something that you can do. In the arts industry, when the fashion industry, things like that. And even if so, I think it's a bit much because with discrimination that happens with employers, I wouldn't even, have someone put themselves in that position because you'll find people actually switching their names. If they have like a really ethnic name, if you want to say.
Right.
They would put an initial or they'll actually use the middle name that might be more to the,
more European.
More European, Anglo-Saxon, that may seem appropriate because you want to look good on paper to employers just based on your name. But just to go back to the cover letter, you want to, of course, have your name, your address, or not even address because things have evolved over the years, but you want to have your email address, the best contact for you, such as a cell phone. If you have a LinkedIn profile, that will definitely take up your header. Don't ever put information in the header or the footer because if you have multiple pages, that information will repeat on every page. So you just use the 1 inch by 1 inch margins on your paper. Make sure that your content is within that alignment. But then you tell the person who you are, you put the contact information, you put dear, sir, madam, or if you even have the name of the person, which I would encourage people to do, take that extra step and find out who you're interviewing or who's in charge of HR or who's the person that you would contact primarily for onboarding. That would be your in. That would be your opportunity to make that connection up front by addressing a direct person. And then you get into your skills. Talk about what you've done. Quantify what you've done. What have you done to make an impact on the last company, organization, or wherever you were? What impact have you made so that you can show that you've had some sort of valuable contribution, set some valuable contribution to the organization or company? It's something that people tend to not do. They just say, I'm the best person for this job. I'm the fit. Right. But they never say why. Why are you the good fit? And then they'll say, well, you can see my resume. It has the information on there.
Right.
Okay, let's go to the resume. The resume didn't say much of anything, okay? You need to quantify what you've done. If you work with 10 clients, you need to indicate that you've worked with 10 participants to provide what. It's always a who, what, when, where, what, and why. On the resume should always have numbers on there because it shows the volume of work that you've done that shows growth and change.
Good point. That's a great information there so far. Like, I hope everyone is listening. Once again, for those of you that's just logging in, we're talking today about employment and employability. My guest today is Shamira Busby Forrester. She is. You can tell them what you can tell them what you do, because I gave your whole.
You did.
bio.
You
Yeah.
crossed me up, man.
But yes, so we're talking about employment and employability, right? Especially right now during a pandemic and during a time when a lot of people are just not working, right? So we're kind of like at the point of now getting to the interview, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things I remember us talking about, we talked about this a little earlier. I think it was a couple of days ago. And we're going to get into professional attire and get into the interviewing skills and the confidence and stuff like that, right?
Sure.
So interviewing, and I'm going to give my little thing about interviewing. So professional attire, you're getting dressed to go to an interview. What as someone who's looking at people coming in, what are you looking at for people that are coming in for interview? How should I be dressing for an interview? Even if it's a construction job, should I be dressing in proper clothes, or I mean, if let's say it's a manager for a construction company, or let's say if it's how should I be dressing for this interview?
It all depends. And it's interesting that you mentioned the construction industry, because I develop a lot of construction training programs, particularly for public housing residents. And oftentimes, it's dirty work. So if you say you're going to come up there in a 3-piece suit, or even you're a suit and tie, they're going to look at you as if, hey, what's going on? You don't ever see a developer or contractor in a suit unless they're going to have some sort of big board meeting. And even so, they still wear dungarees or some sort of slacks with a polo shirt. Or you can have a button-down shirt, but a tie isn't always compulsory in the construction industry. Because oftentimes when you're going to look for work, they're probably going to start you off on the same day or put you to do some sort of test that day. And some of the fibers might actually get in the way, might be flammable, depending on your fiber, your clothing. You don't want to put yourself in polyester, right? Or, they might ask you to do a hand tool, because now employers, what they're doing is that they're not taking your word for it. They're actually expecting you to showcase what you can do based on what you say and what your resume says.
So don't fudge on your resume.
Don't do that. Again, if someone else does your resume for you, it is in your best interest to make sure that you read it and make sure that it is you. It is definitely all that you've done, because employers are going to look at it and they're going to make sure that they hold you accountable for what you said in writing. So that, that's where you go with it. But in terms of dress, construction, that's one thing. Again, things have evolved over the years in terms of what's acceptable. I know I have tattoos in my hand. If I were to go on another interview, I would have to cover up with a suit. Now, some places, depending in the nonprofit world, they're a little bit more relaxed about that, but don't come with it all on your face. Don't do that.
I cover mine up whenever. I never wear short sleeves anymore.
Don't come with it on your neck. Don't, depending on the culture and environment of the place, you want to make sure that you're suited for that. And it's always good to take a walk through in the neighborhood to see people going in and out of the building. What are they dressing like? And you want to mimic that. I went to an interview one time, and my boss now, she said, "Don't wear a suit again. Don't, you were overdressed, But I had to show my best self. I wanted this job so bad, and I wanted to talk the talk, but I wanted you to see me, But then oftentimes, if you have it here, this doesn't really matter. In a lot of other cases, though, people want the face. They want that someone or that person to come through and represent the company or the organization. So sometimes you might be expected to wear a suit. I expect individuals, or encourage, I should say, individuals to stick to the navy blues, the blacks, and the suit color. Navy blue and black, you can use them over and over again.
That again. Say that one more time. One more time.
Navy blue.
If you guys are not listening, she's giving a lot of really good gems here. So I'm going to just come every time I hear a nice gem, I want her to repeat it again if somebody is just tuning in. So if you guys are going on an interview, because I'm looking at what Debbie said. She said, I've interviewed candidates for position, and it's unreal how unprofessional they are dressed for professional positions. So let's say those colors again one more time. Navy
blue and black. Those are the staple colors. Everyone should have a good navy blue or black suit in their closet. For women, if it's a skirt or pantsuit. For men, whatever. And make sure that it's well fitted. Now you can go to Macy's or any of those stores, and they will measure you. They'll take, for the men, they'll do the collar measurements. They'll do the shoulder to arm length measurements. They'll let you know exactly what your measurements are, so that you can find the right fitting tie and the right fitting suit, so that it fits on your shoulder well, it fits on your waist well. You don't have to worry about notching up your belts and it's sagging.
Absolutely. Men, I think men should, this is something men, if you guys don't know, like I can tell you 16 and a half, 42 long. I can tell you my sizes in suits and like, right. You like, this is something you should know as just like a man, right? Going out for interview, or even as a woman, you should know a nice, like you can be able to look and tell a nice fitting suit. Like I've seen a lot of the younger generation, like it might be their one suit.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes you can tell it's super baggy. It's not, they don't look comfortable in it.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And someone told me a couple of years ago, you have to dress for what you want. You have to dress for success.
Dress the part.
It's so real. When, funny enough, when I started doing that, opportunities started presenting themselves to me. Like actually someone came to me, like she said, I saw your resume, I have something for you.
Yeah.
Right. And it's only after I said, you know what, let me just try this out for about a good 6 months. And I started dressing very differently from how I dressed previously and how other people on the job are dressing. Right. Just, you have to dress like Debbie said, dress the part.
Yeah. Yeah.
So navy blue and black.
Navy blue and black. You can play with the colors of the interior shirt. Like for men, it's always good to keep it classic. Keep it either light blue or a white. White usually
pink.
Pink, it depends. It depends.
I have one pink on interview.
You can wear it. Men can wear a pink shirt under their navy blue suit, and I think it's the most attractive thing. If you have a nice tie, you have to figure out if you're going to do a pin dot tie. You have to figure out if you're going to do a plaid stripe. There are different types of ties that would coordinate with the suits and the shirt color. So you just want to make sure
brown shoes, some clean,
nice. Brown shoes.
Yes.
Too bad you can't stop off at the shoemaker anymore and have them kind of polish.
Have a polish. Well, if anybody is downtown Manhattan, Lower Manhattan, there's one on Fulton Street between William Street and Nassau Street. They still clean shoe. They still do the buffing of the shoes on that. And there's also one a block away on Ann Street. I could tell you where they are because when I got those important meetings, I get them touched up right before I go in. You always got to make a good impression, right?
Of course.
So that's dressing for the interview now. So we're getting into the interview, and I want to touch on some of the interviewing skills, because one of the things I told you that impressed me, because I also interview people as well, and one of the things that impressed me in interviews, and people always do well, but I really get impressed when someone looks up the mission of the organization.
Oh yeah,
and they find a way to bring it into the conversation, and you can tell that they've done research about the position that they're interviewing for. A lot of times, people that I find, they just want a job, and I get it, but they didn't do the research about the job that they're looking for.
Yeah,
and as someone that's hiring, it kind of puts you off a little bit because you're like, well, if you didn't care enough to look up what this job does, I don't know if you're going to put in that extra effort here on the job itself.
Right. Some jobs require research. So if we're not taking the initiative in the beginning, it gives you these dubious thoughts about what can potentially happen in terms of the person. And I get it, nerve sets in, but some people just don't know. So again, people are glued to their phones. They're glued to the social media and whatnot. I would encourage people to tune into LinkedIn, get an account, create a profile. And I say this because your online presence says a lot, but it also helps for you to understand what's available out there in terms of employment and employment opportunities. So LinkedIn is one of those things where I know for sure there are recruiters who would look at your profile, and if it seems to fit with what they're looking for, they'll reach out to you. You don't even have to look sometimes these days. They would tap into you and they say, hey, I have this position, I'm interested in talking with you. They will seek you out because that's what recruiters are doing now on LinkedIn. But you have to make sure that you put the things that makes it true to who you are and what your qualifiers are to get that job. The Facebook and the social media, Instagram and whatnot, those things, be careful what you put on there. I know it's discrimination and employers shouldn't be looking at those profiles, but they do. They do. Be careful of what you're tagged in. People look at these profiles to see who you are coming in. So in the training programs that I develop and administer, what we do is we have the soft skills component. And in the soft skills component, we have to go through everyone's social media page. We don't tell them about it in the beginning, but we do it. And then we go back to the class and that's a workshop. And we say, hey, well, we saw you with this stack of money. You know, we saw you with popping bottles. We saw you doing this. But we can do that as an educator. We can tell people the things that we see, because at that point, we will say, look, you got to clean this up. Don't give me popcherry69 at gmail.com as your email address. I know that was a bit raunchy, but that's what I've seen. I've seen even worse. So
you're on Instagram doing the busset challenge every 10 minutes, right?
Right.
And you're coming in to teach kids, and you're like, you know. So right. So So be mindful of social media. We're in an era of social media.
It is dangerous. It is dangerous. Social media can be your blessing, but it also can be your curse. If you want to expand on a business and you want to tap in, to information or know how to do things, there are healthy ways to look at social media, but there are unhealthy ways of looking at it, with the gossiping and the fights and the trips and the just be careful of your online presence, and make sure that you have that professional platform so that you can convey who you are professionally and what you want the world to see in terms of your skill sets. That's what's important for people to know and to tap in and understand who they are. So that way, when someone do ask you, tell me about yourself, you can come off with it real quick because you know what you can bring to the table. Shoot, you can make your own table for that matter. You just have to discern what's the appropriate information to give to individuals.
What's a common thing you see people do in interviews that you would say is an automatic disqualifier, right? We kind of talked about that. We kind of talked about that before, right? Right. They yeah.
What are you asking me? You have to do the job. I mean, come on now. You're amongst professionals. You are seeking employment. You are dressed to the nines. You look amazing. But you sit down in the chair with comfort. And sometimes, because you see, if it's a Black person, you see another Black person amongst maybe other people of ethnic backgrounds. So you get comfortable with that one person. So you start focusing on this one Black person because you figure you got the job and you do one of these.
So, and just to put it all out there, I'm going to be very honest because we had this conversation as well. So I was that person, people. I was that person, right? I went in, I had my master's degree. I'm like, yo, I'm going to crush this. And I'm crushing the interview, right? We're like 90% through the interview. So I started to, I leaned back and I was relaxing and I'm answering the question. And it was a 2-person interview. It's a panel interview. For those of you who don't know what a panel interview is, that's a panel interview kind of works both ways, right? So you can have multiple people interview you for a position, or you can have multiple attendees being interviewed by someone, right? So I was being interviewed by more than one person. One of them happened to be Black. One happened to be white, right? And I started to get super comfortable, and I was like, "Yeah, I got it." Like you've ever been in an interview and you're like, "I have this," and I started to really relax, and I started to. And she did this one thing. She did this. The black one. Shout out to Tina Dean Turner. So she did this, and I immediately perked up because I'm like, I caught the signal that she was giving me, right?
Yeah.
Like, she gave me that, and I immediately did it, right? And I think we talked about kind of like emotional intelligence and kind of being able to pick up on cues and knowing how to speak during interviews. And sometimes you have to be comfortable. People say and uhs a lot, and it's a skill to kind of practice not doing, right? Because and even Obama does it. He does it a lot.
Yes, he does.
Sometimes when we don't know when to put words to put in places, we use ums and uhs.
Yes.
And then you become conscious of saying the word and a lot.
Yes.
So we have, I think, actually practice being interviewed. There's some common questions that interviewers ask. I will give you that. What makes you the best position? What makes you the best person for this job? They always ask that. You'll never leave an interview that they won't say that, right?
No, that's the common one. Say, tell me about yourself. Why are you? That usually comes later on in an interview. Tell me why you're the best fit. Talk about your strengths and weaknesses. What's a challenge that you faced in the workplace? Things like that. And oftentimes people don't know. One of the things that seem to not work in someone's favor is if a person asks, what didn't work in your last position, or, what happened, or something along the lines of, name a challenge that you've had in the workplace. And then we would get responses like, my boss, we just agreed. We didn't see eye to eye. Excuse me? Or
that's a red flag, right?
I had this coworker, he was just on my back and, always, sucking up to the boss. Excuse me? People come off and say some really off the cuff things. It was their real lived experiences,
right.
But it wasn't appropriate for the setting because it raises a lot of flags when you come off with these things, these experiences that you've had that maybe you feel as if you're holding your point, but in actuality, you're not looking favorable to the new employer because they're wondering if you're a problem, if you will become a problem, if you're going to challenge their authority, if you're going to undermine their authority. People don't want to bring in other folks, but they want a handhold at times. They want someone who's going to hit the ground running. So if you come in with a specific skill set, you got to make sure that you can convey exactly what it is that you can do. And if it's a weakness, you turn that into a strength. If your weakness is that you you're not able to leave work on time, that is a good weakness.
Right. And they ask that a lot, right? What would you say your weakness is? And you have to understand, you have to flip your weakness into a strength, right? Like, so a easy answer is, I tend to be a workaholic. Right. I say that that's one of my weaknesses. I tend to be a workaholic. Sometimes I get so focused, I have to stay focused until the task gets accomplished.
Exactly.
Right? And that's what I use as my weakness, which if you are an employer looking at someone and you get a person that that's hyper focused on getting something done.
Yeah.
Right. That's always a good that's a question that's always going to be asked. What do you think your strengths are? What do you think what is a weakness? They're going to ask it, and a lot of times it's information that it's something that it might throw you for a loop if you weren't expecting it.
Right.
So there's certain questions I think that are like gimme questions, right? And they'll ask you, of course, to expand on certain jobs, but these are staple questions that happens during interviews a lot.
You have to be prepared for it and figure out that script. You said the 2-minute,
2-minute elevator conversation.
If you have a 2-minute elevator pitch, you can definitely think about the questions that commonly come into play in interviews because they're out there. And you have to sit down in front of your camera. If you don't have someone to sit with you and talk through, the questions to show that your verbal, your emotional intelligence is interplay, your whole verbal, nonverbal communication skills are within, alignment with what you're looking for. All those things, if you don't have a person, look at your phone, look in the mirror. If you are planning for an interview, this interview is coming up. At times, I find myself looking in the mirror and I'm talking to myself, or I'm talking to my reflection, I should say. And I would, although it's the same thing coming right back at me, but it's my way for me to look to see exactly what I'm saying in terms of my mouth, what my eyes are doing, how my face is lifted, figuring out how my posture is going to be walking into that setting. I mean, nerves does setting once you get in and you're sitting in that seat.
Talking about the sweaty hands.
I know. But you have to understand that interviews aren't necessarily for the employers per se. That is your power. Interviews is for the interviewee to showcase their power. And people seem to not walk into that space with confidence because they feel that the power is within, or beyond the desk where the employer are the ones who actually has the job to give. But in actuality, it is the job for you to take. If you walk into an environment where you show your poise, that you show, okay, you look good, but you got to sound good. You got to actually rehearse what you know. And even if you don't rehearse it, it comes to you like routine. Whatever you know is like, you know what you know and you don't know what you don't know. They say fake it till you make it. It works sometimes, but it can come back to haunt you also. But it's the confidence that you have to come in with. It's that pitch. It's those key words. You don't have to be fancy with your vocabulary. Don't give me, a $50 word for a $2 sentence. Don't do that because then people will fact check you and find out if you actually know what it means because they'll reverse, the whole statement, or the definition of the word that you use and you haven't been able to communicate or convey exactly what is happening, right?
Right. So to give you a great example of that, right? So doing that same interview, because I'm great with numbers and stuff like that. So she goes, so how are you with qualitative and quantitative data, right? So I had to now, had I have not known what qualitative versus quantitative is,
Yeah.
right? It would have thrown me, right? I would have been like, what are they talking about? And that goes back to actually don't put out for a job that you have no clue
Right.
in doing, right? And to kind of touch on the elevator pitch thing, if a lot of people don't know what the elevator pitch is, just imagine you're getting on the first floor and you have to go to the 16th or the 20th floor. And you have to explain to this person who you are and why you are the best person for this job. You have 2 minutes to explain to them who I am and why I'm the best person for this job. And you only have a few floors to explain to this person who you are and why you are the best person for the job. And that's something for you to kind of work through, right? If you practice, it's practice, and it comes with practice. So we talked about some interviewing skills. We talked about confidence and professional attire. And we talked about social media. The final thing, because we're at 40 minutes now.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
Right? You see what I told you, right? So one of the last things, because we're going to make this a two-part conversation, because we have so many other things. We didn't get to developing your skills right now, your current work skills. Because remember, we talked about learning Excel, learning Excel and learning certain things to develop your skills.
Yeah,
So
honing in on specific skills.
Yeah, we could touch on that another time, and how to balance your personal and manage all that other stuff, and stackable credentials and micro. We could talk about that at another time, right? So the final thing we want to touch on today, right? One of the things we talked about was trades versus college, and I'm a big college guy, and when you talked to me, you said, "Listen, sometimes college is not for everybody, and a trade school might be for them."
Exactly.
And so don't be afraid to look into trade schools. Right. I think this generation, because they're so that they think that the best money is the corporate money, or I have to get into the office setting, but don't realize that there are a lot of construction workers that are making great money, electricians especially. If you do not know about electricians, please try to learn and get into an electrical union and learn that trade. You will never, ever in your lifetime be broke if you can learn electrical and plumbing. We will always need electricity.
Yes.
We will always need plumbing.
Yes.
Right? So trades, right? So what about, is there anything you can tell us about trades, or do you encourage children to go into trades or anything like that? And I saw also, I know I'm all over the place, but I saw a special on CNN, a Caribbean woman, a Trinidadian woman, teaching young girls, because there's not a lot of girls going into trades as well.
Yeah.
Right. So is there anything that you could kind of touch on with trades? I know we kind of mentioned it already.
No, I'll say you mentioned the electricians union. The electricians union actually had their exam about a week or two ago. Their next exam, they usually offer it 6 months apart from each other if you're living in New York City. But I think for most of the union, the trades union, they offer within the same time schedule. So every 6 months, the unions put out the call for an exam. You sign up for it. You'll see lines. You'll swear people are actually looking for sneakers, or as we do here in the city, right?
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely.
In certain areas, if you're looking for work, you'll see those lines are really long. Now it's COVID, so it's online, and they give you literally, maybe a minute or two to be on that line in queue, so you can apply for these opportunities with the unions. So the unions, check dol.gov and check to see what's available, because all the unions are listed on that website, and you can check to see when their cycles are for examinations. For the unions, honestly, if you have experience in the trades, and they'll teach you, more than what you need to know, but sometimes you don't always have to have that. You need to have that drive. Again, going back to that motivation, that drive, that understanding of what you want, you need to make sure that is very clear. Because once you take the union exam is practically reading, math, and some critical thinking skills. It has nothing to do with electricity.
The actual, right.
If Local 3 or any one of them are listening to
Because they give you all the training. They give you all the training in schooling.
You get all of those trainings in school, and the math, it's technical math. It can be calculus, kind of like, but it's mostly algebra. Actually, I'm lying. It's algebra, but it's the algebra that can lead up to calculus, depending on the level of exam and depending on what they put on there. Because nationally, they compile all these questions and they put it on the test, so you never know what's going to be on the test. But I tell you, if you understand reading comprehension and you know how to look through and sift through, the plot, the theme, and all those things in writing and comprehending, that's what it's about. It's about writing, understanding basic math skills. In terms of the trades, you know my point on this, but I'll share this with the public. I encourage people to make sure that you figure out what your child wants to do or help them to explore the possibilities. We come from an era, I know for myself, for you, Chad, we come from an era where our parents said or told us to become a doctor, become a lawyer, become something that's prestigious in their eyes, only for them to feel good in the end about what you've managed to accomplish. They don't go through the grief or the late nights or any of the things that you go through to accomplish these things. They just want in the end, I know for most parents, they want in the end to say, my daughter is a doctor. Bragging points. But really, you have to figure out what's good for you as an individual. You have to make sure that there's a balance of both also. In schools, it's missing. There's a systemic issue going on within the schools where, they're not getting what they need, honestly. We had home economics. I told you I grew up on St. Croix. I came here when I was 13. But in junior high school, between the two junior high schools that I went to Arthur Richards and then I went to Woodson. When I went to Woodson, I was in the band. There was home economics. For the guys, there was shop.
We had shop and welding, yeah.
Yeah, so those are the skills that you had. And then when I came here, I went to Wingate High School right here in Crown Heights. And again, you chose the house that you wanted to be in. For me, it was Arthur Ashe because I was so devoted to my grandmother and making sure that I would make her feel good. And I was going on that doctor track. Did I become a doctor? Absolutely not. I think I become something just as, essential as a doctor in terms of looking at human behavior and helping people to transform that. Because you could get someone well and they can walk around, but if you don't change the behavior and the mindset, that's another problem you have to deal with. And in this entire process, you have to understand that people have specific niche or skill sets and talents that they can hone in on. So while I went to Wingate, I learned all that I can. I did the home economics class. I learned how to bake my 1, 2, 3, pound cake from scratch. And those are the little tidbits that I can sprinkle as I am an adult, because I have to adult now. I have children. I have to do those things. But you could take those skills and make it something that can be, worth making money from. So sewing. Now the fashion industry is booming more than ever. If we were to teach the girls and boys how to sew, basic sewing skills from high school, there's a possibility that they can use that skill to either use it for entrepreneurship or within the employment sector, because it's needed in both fields, in both lenses.
Right. And I find the education system is just a little different here because you have to go to a specialized high school to kind of learn that. And exactly. Whereas in the Caribbean, like I did, like you said, shop and architecture, right? So, and when I came up here, I was like, architecture, right? Like they looked at me like, and I really liked architecture. Right. And that's something that almost everyone was taken back, because even if you didn't know how to just make the simplest thing, you need to learn how to read blueprints and stuff like that, right?
Exactly.
They didn't have that up here in New York public school. So that was something, they had it in Prospect Heights that I went to, right. But it really wasn't something that was in every school. There was not architecture in every school.
Right.
So there's a lot of things. It's more trade focused in the Caribbean, but I think that's something that needs to be worked on. You might find it in certain schools like the automotive.
If you want to do mechanical, go to automotive. But essentially, a lot of the trades are missing in the schools. And I'm not saying to get deep and dirty with it. I'm just saying give the students options so that they can make a well-informed decision about what they can and cannot do. Because when they exit or when that graduation time comes, they expect, the guidance counselors or whosoever, they have these expectations. Okay, now you really need to figure out what your extracurricular activities are going to be, because if you're going to apply for college, they're going to look to see all the things that you've done. If that was to be embedded well beforehand and give the students the confidence that they need to make choices about whether they want to work with their hands or whether they want to, or, in terms of using a hammer or tools or whatever it is, give them the choice to do the heavy lifting on their own, but you have to give the information. And workforce development is missing in the public schools and definitely should be incorporated. Resume writing, all these skills that are essential, banking, the simple things. So when you get a job, you got to know how to manage your money, right?
Absolutely.
Just putting those pieces into the curricula. It doesn't have to be a separate thing. It could actually blend in right with the curricula that's being offered and make it a day in the life kind of experience so that the children could truly discern what it is that they want to do or what would spark an interest in them. And that would help out, in terms of college. There's an understanding that it's not for everyone. Children will go to college because there's pressure from political parties, there's pressure from their parents, and different people to go to college. But why is it that you have to go to college to figure out if that's the way you're going to make money to end up in debt? It doesn't make sense. If it makes sense if a person were to work a little bit, or if it's while during high school, or maybe taking a little bit of time to do some internships or activities that's work related, get to understand self and where they want to be. Once they get that grounding, they can then figure if college is the pathway, a trade school is the pathway, or whatever it is that is.
Or even the military is a pathway.
Even the military as a pathway. Whatever the pathway is, there shouldn't be this one lens to go in the direction of, higher ed. It has to be a balance.
Shout out to my fraternity brother Mike. He says college is a business, and you know what? We're gonna end up. I got one more thing to say, and then we're gonna kind of like wrap it up, right? But for the most part, I know a lot of people that I went to college with that majored in something, and they're definitely not even working in that field, right? Because I think a lot of times, and it's something someone said to me a long time ago. They said sometimes employers just want to see that you can start and finish something. Yeah. That's what they say. I know a lot of. I have a good friend of mine. She's making close to $190,000. She went to school for biology, doing nothing in biology, absolutely nothing in biology. Yeah. And so we start one way, and I think if we had that idea that maybe this is not. And Mike, I think Mike, he was biology and pre-med as well, like me, right? A lot of us started at pre-med because that's what our parents wanted. Yeah. Right. It's not what we necessarily wanted, but that's what our parents wanted because being a doctor was cool, and being being in the medical field is cool. And then we got in there, and we this is not really what we wanted to do. And then we got in the real world. It's like that's really not for me, and we went a different direction. So I'm 100% signing on to what you said. Know your child, right? Know your child, and as a child, kind of know biochemistry. He said, I know it was something like that. It was biochemistry, and he's working in the financial industry right now.
Right. I mean, the biochemistry, I'm sure, is paying off in some respect, but it really isn't what makes him, the money that he makes.
He's not doing biochemistry. He's doing finance. He's working in financial.
It's the math.
Mike doesn't. Lazy bastard.
But I'd like to plug in just one more thing.
Okay.
2 summers ago, just to go with the whole youth perspective, 2 summers ago, my son did not get accepted for summer youth employment. He was disappointed, but wants to work. Has his working papers, nothing available. Oftentimes, parents also have to do the heavy lifting. You can't expect for things to fall into your lap. So this is where the communication skills come into play. I was walking down to Atlantic Avenue, and I happened to see this wood shop. I walked in. And I asked the guys, I said, hey, would you mind hiring? Are you looking for someone to help you out? Or would you mind hiring a 15-year-old who's really eager to work? And my son knows absolutely nothing about tools, or anything like that. But I asked the question, they hem and hawed and give me some, you have to sign a waiver and whatnot. And I said, that's fine. I dragged my son down there because, not dragged him literally, but, again, I nudged him. We went there. He wasn't interested, but he ended up working there for 2 years. He made a few $1,000s just for the summer working at the wood shop because they taught him skills that he thought he didn't know he would like. Right. These are the things we have to break away from that one lens, that unilateral kind of, way of, or narrow-minded thinking.
Right, absolutely.
What children should and should not do in terms of career exploration. You have to broaden the horizons and make sure that whatever it is that you do, as long as it's legal, and they're not harming anyone or themselves, that they have the opportunity to do the things that they enjoy. And he enjoyed it. So, you never know what you like until you try.
Absolutely. Take an apprentice, doing a little apprentice work, let them carry on the tools and stuff like that. Let them carry around the buckets. And, listen, there's summers in college that I did roofing, right? You just don't know where you're going to end up. And always having a trade and knowing how to do something always works out well for you. I mean, I grew up helping my uncle do masonry in the Caribbean, right? Like that's what we did, build a part of the house every day. And we did this. So, don't keep an open mind when it comes to looking for jobs, right? And just to wrap up kind of what we said, don't be afraid to start at an entry level and work your way through. Don't be you might want to be the boss one day, but a lot of times you don't start as the boss. Maybe you might have to start entry level, delivering medical records from one place to another.
If
right?
you want to be a boss, you got to know what the bottom is doing.
There you go. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have you back for the second part of our conversation because we had a lot that we didn't touch on. And it's been 55 whole minutes. And, and I told you it was going to go by pretty quick. Yeah. I would like to thank everybody that chimed in today. Someone said, do you know that those career assessment tests that you may gravitate to, it's useful for adults as well? So we could talk about career assessment tests and all these other stuff next time. And sometimes we can talk about a lot of these guidance counselors who might have failed our kids as well. So we could talk about that. So we have a whole another conversation for next time. So folks, Tuesdays, 7 p.m. I'd like to thank Shamira for being here today and giving such wonderful information. Thank you so much to everybody that had questions, had comments. Thank you, Debola, Zola, Ionergy, Carmelina, Tragic, everybody who was Rosie, everybody who was chiming in today, Mike, everybody who was talking today. Thank you guys so much. And we're going to see you guys next Tuesday. And Shamir, hopefully, I don't know when you can be back again, but we have to have the second part of our conversation.
You tell me when you can be here.
Conversation. So thank you. Thank you so much. See you guys next time.
Take good care.